Welcome back to the channel, or welcome for the first time. Today, I'm going to check out the rarest part for this wagon. Doing a little searching on Marketplace for really nothing, and I came across something for this that I can't pass up. So, I'm going right now. As they say, if you're not first, you're last. It's the bumper. It's the rear bumper. They rot away. They rust away. People drive them. Wagons are disposable. There's no wagons left. If anything's gonna rust, it's the bumper. And the guy also has a front bumper listed, which I don't really need, but I'm gonna check it out anyway. So let's hit the road and see what this guy's got. I brought one of my friends. I'm gonna let this warm up a bit. Cruising at 70 something for 3 hours. Another 3 hours back with some bumpers. So let's be clear here. I saw these on Facebook. I wasn't particularly looking for a rear bumper for this wagon, but if you're not first, you're last. So I immediately drove out there just to get it. The pictures look good enough. Of course, I'm concerned that once I put this bumper on, I'll back into something, or the kid will back into something and dent it. So I'll probably keep it on the shelf for a little bit as that paranoia hopefully dissipates. But we will see. At least I was the first guy there to get it and then hang it in the rafters and never put it on. And case in point, when I was backing this out, I backed into the snowbank. Of course, no damage, but it's that thought that keeps creeping up. I know for a fact 63 4 and 5 Plymouth and Dodge wagon rear bumpers are impossible to find. I've seen many people posting looking for this bumper. I never even tried to find a bumper for this thing. As tough a shape as it's in, I mean, this bolt just isn't supporting anything. It's rotted away. The end ones are there. The center ones, this one's rusting. This one's almost gone. This one's still there. These are actually license plate light and reverse light. And then here's the holes I noticed in the ad. I don't know what they're for, so we're going to peek under and see what that does. Okay, so these bolts, that one's missing, and there's two holes here, hold the lights in. That's why that one's loose. So this actually, the tab on this one is rotted off on this side. So I'll have to fix that and find some of these tiny bolts. So when I showed up in the family truckster here, the guy asked me where I was from. And when I told him, he told me he knew of a guy who had a Mopar Horde that was near me. And he was like, I can't remember his name. I think his name was Ron. And I'm like, yeah, Ron. Ron is the guy I bought this wagon from. And he says to me, he says, he had a 71 green Dart with a white vinyl top that I wanted to buy. And I said, that's funny. I bought it. And I said, yeah, that car had like 30,000 miles on it. And he said, yep, that's the one. I said, well, this car came from Ron. I actually bought that 71 Dart the same day, but I had since sold it. I had actually bought 8 cars, I think, from Ron. I bought this. This is the wagon when Ron drove it. He actually drove it quite a bit. This was the very first time I saw it, which was actually decades before I bought it. And there it sat. He has since finished that building. There it was when I went to pick it up. That's actually a 65 altered wheelbase car next to it. It's not real. 318 poly, that was seized. The interior, it wasn't terrible. And there it is on the tow truck. This car was actually in the worst movie ever made. It's called Taking Woodstock. And it's in a couple scenes. This one, it's driving by in the background. And here it's driving by the idiot who's like the star in the movie. And these are like behind the scenes shots Ron took. He brought like half a dozen cars. Like that's his Barracuda and those are his 2 Plymouths. The 71 Dart. And there it is. The first time I saw it, there in the lower left. Got the sheets off it. It looked pretty good. Had to get a tow truck, didn't have a trailer. Looking pretty filthy. There it is, 35,000 and change, all original. Cleaned it up. There it is sitting next to the wagon. I got these cars on the same day. And there's that multi-green interior. And this thing was stupid original. I mean, look at that trunk floor. I've never seen anything like it. And that spare tire, it's got like markings on the tire itself. Something I've never seen is the little piece of felt here where the jack goes in the trunk. I get a kick out of these, like little factory errors. You know, these were just regular cars being assembled by regular people. This 62 two-door plus a four-door hardtop. This is when Ron first got it. He drove this car. That's when I first saw it there, dead center in the screen. And I peeled that blanket back and I was like, I need to have this car. Looking a little worse for wear. There it is. Still love the way that looks. He's had a lot of cars in that barn. On my trailer, it's the first car I think I took on a trailer. That engine, 318 poly, I didn't even bother trying to get it running. That interior was completely wasted. Trunk was there, I guess, full of junk. And what a rot box this thing was. I've never seen a firewall this bad. All cleaned up. There was that four-door hardtop. Basically a parts car. I wanted to save it, but it wasn't happening. I used the dash out of it, though, for my two-door hardtop. Ran when parked. And I actually bought another car, this other 62. Our 58 Dodge Coronet. It sat for 30 years, sinking in the mud in that barn. And ironically, there's the Valiant in the background, which we came back and got 1 year later. Of course, the 62 Valiant. That was one cold day. Here's Ron giving some hand signals I could not see, nor do I understand. And of course, the 64 Belvedere, which only sat for 20 years. Take it easy there, Ron. This guy also had a lot of cool Furies. He had a 70 Fury GT with a 440, and it had like the strobe stripes, little tiny reflective tape, kind of like the AR Cuda, but really small and just like a thin line. He also had a 70 Dodge Charger RT, 440, 4-speed Dana car, Hemi orange, black interior. He had the original motor. He bought it in, I think, the early 80s. Paid like $3,500 for it. Really nice car. Not like overly restored, but solid, like original car. Really nice. I didn't take pictures though because I didn't really want to invade his privacy. So this is what we got. Let's take a look. I bought two bumpers. Both of them. Both the 63 Plymouth Wagon bumper and the 62 Valiant, what was listed as a front bumper. So a little background on these bumpers. Apparently, near where this guy lived, there was a rechroming place, and they went out of business, and they took a whole bunch of bumpers and threw them out to be disposed of. And he went over and picked through them all and picked out all the Mopar bumpers. Honestly, the rechroming job is not the greatest. Now, these have been sitting for probably, who knows, 20, 30 years, and there's rust coming through here. But I don't see any repairs. But as you'll see on this bumper, it doesn't look like it was re-chromed because there's rust around this bolt hole. There is a difference between the front and rear bumpers on a 62 Valiant. Here we have a 62 Valiant. So I took some measurements on the front and rear bumpers. This bumper guard, dead center, is a shorter distance to the edge of the bumper than the bumper bolt on the rear bumper. And this bolt is at a different distance as well. But the main issue is this angles up on the front bumper. So you got it angling up on the front with the cutout on the front. On the rear, you got it the cutout on the bottom, but it's angling up on the back. And you couldn't really fake a front bumper on the back, even if the bumper holes lined up, because this body line is so pronounced. You know, the angle would be going down, it just wouldn't match. Same on the front. If the angle was going the opposite way, it would kind of jut out into where the tire is. So we can't have that. So when I got there and looked at this, just a quick look. So if I orient this bumper with the cutout on the bottom, the angle on the side goes up, which matches the rear bumper. Which, if I had a choice, the rear bumper is definitely in worse shape. You know, we have all this going on. I always catch like a piece of clothing or my hand on this. It's definitely way more pitted, and it didn't really shine up. Whereas the front is much more acceptable. I believe it's a little tweaked. It's hard to even tell. I think maybe here. I know it looks crooked. I think the brackets got tweaked a little, which brought this end up. But I think overall it's straight-ish. So the condition of this Valiant bumper, it's not perfect. Like I pointed out, the rust here. I don't know if these are scuff marks or if they'll come out. You know, they're dirty. Little rust there, scratch there. But in comparison, it's definitely a better bumper. These bumpers are just not available. Not new. They don't interchange front to back. Unlike the Barracuda 67 through 9, the front and rear bumpers interchange. When I line this up, the punch outs line up perfectly. I'll check the front. Yep. The holes do not match up on the front, and also on the rear. There's these tabs and holes for the license plate light. So this is without a doubt a rear bumper for a early 60s Valiant, at least a 62. So that will be going on eventually. So that's a score. You know, if I had to choose two cars that needed rear bumpers, it was definitely the Wagon, which we'll get to, and the Valiant. Okay, now the bumper that I went there for, the 64 Plymouth Wagon rear bumper. Now this one has some rust coming through the chrome, and it had a couple other marks. Let me get this situated better. So there is a mark there that's really hard to see. It's kind of like a divot right there. There's that rust spot there. So there's rust on either end there. Some rust here. A little ding there. Just minor stuff. I mean, for a Wagon bumper, these are just unheard of. So these are the two holes and this one that hold the reverse and the license plate light in. This one's just a dummy hole. This is for the license plate and the bumper bolts. And this is where mine is all rotted out. Now, as he pointed out, this doesn't have any holes here for the foot pad. The foot pad and the handle was an option for putting your luggage on the luggage rack. So I can easily drill holes here. I'm not going to be able to, I'm imagining the hole for that is square, but I don't mind drilling a hole there. So here it is flipped over, and as you can see, the same marks that were on that Valiant bumper. So this must be them, quote unquote, straightening it out. I noticed, I don't know if you can see that, there's a crack there and there, which is on the front side. It's hard to see. Maybe the camera picks it up. There's no rust proofing, or they didn't clean up the backs of these bumpers at all. And this has definitely been re-chromed because it's been worked. There's some more marks. So, like I said, my understanding is this company went out of business, I don't know, somewhere in the 80s or 90s. Maybe the early 2000 era. I'm not really sure. I don't think he was really sure. But I kind of understand why they went out of business. I mean, this bumper still has the factory rust proofing that gets sprayed all over and made its way onto this bumper. This bumper definitely shines, though. It's definitely better than the one I got. It's not rotted through. There's no major issues. It's got a little bit of rust here and there, which I'll address with some rust proofing stuff. You know, this is behind the license plate, so who cares? But all in all, I mean, how lucky could one be? I wasn't looking for a bumper for this wagon. Never thought I'd find one. Boom. Came up on Marketplace. Guy listed this as a front bumper for a 62 Valiant, which I don't really need. I get there, it's a rear bumper. And you couldn't tell from the pictures if it was front or rear. A shout out to Alex who sold me these bumpers. I even said to him, you know, thank you for keeping them for, you know, all these years. And apparently he had just listed them with another bumper for like a Lincoln or a Ford or something. I forget. And I was the first one to reply and showed up the next day. And such dumb luck that I ran out and played the lotto after I got home. That didn't work out. I'd like to give one more shout out to the 64 Fury Wagon. George. This car made it 3 hours one way, 70 miles an hour the whole way. 3 hours back, no issues. Drove like a dream, very comfortable. The heater cranks, but I didn't even need it. The sun coming through the windows was enough to keep the cabin warm the whole way. So this wagon's getting some love soon. I started ordering front suspension and rear suspension parts and some steering parts. I have another set of rims for it. It's going to get 15-inch tires. That should help on the drivability, even the gas mileage from what I understand with the larger tires, the 15-inch versus the 14. All the mechanicals on this are new. Brakes, I had the tranny rebuilt. The motor's been rebuilt. Brake booster's been rebuilt. It's got an MSD ignition, solid state voltage regulator, you know, power steering lines. The radiator's original. I didn't do anything to it. Just took it out and put it back. TTI exhaust. They actually make headers for the Poly 318 engines. Who knew? Converted it to dual master cylinder. Kept the power brakes with the drum all around. For you Mopar people out there, I already converted the rear. It's tapered axle. I kept the tapered axle, but converted the drums to 65 drums and put new studs in. So when you pull that wheel off, you can pull the drum right off, and the tapered axle with the hub stays in place. Got the wagon specific dual exhaust that comes out the sides. I even have the chrome trim ring that comes around this piece here. And same as with the rear bumper, I have yet to put it on because I'm afraid once I put it on, it'll fall off. I'll never find another one. Just wanted to show this. I've never seen this before. This came with this wagon. Spare tire cover. It was over the original spare. This back seat, which is original upholstery, was folded down, and it was clear it had not been up in many, many years. I have never seen a plastic tire cover on any of these Mopars. And if we look at this label, the jack instructions, it says sedan, convertible. The jack's under the tire. The jack is in the rear quarter well. And then it's hard to read, but I believe it says Wagon Suburban. It at least says Suburban. Because this is where my jack is. Behind the rear seat. It's still there. And there's the jack. And I mean, this thing is so flimsy and fragile. I don't keep this in the car. I couldn't find a tire small enough where the bottom of the seat wasn't actually contacting the tire. So that seat, even though it's snapped in, it's right on top of that tire, and that would have crushed this. So I keep this in a safe place. I wish I could display it, but it's just not worth putting in there. Plus, we get in and out of this thing. You know, we use the foot things and the handles to get in and out. We'll go to cruisins and sit here and, you know, eat a burger. Once again, I just want to say to Alex, thank you for selling me that bumper and keeping them for all those years. It's really going to make a difference. I'm eventually going to get to the metalwork on this wagon. It doesn't need a lot. And now that I have a welder, and I've replaced the firewall and the floor and the cowl and the frame rails and cross members and upper control arms and trunk floor and package tray and everything on this car, I don't claim to be a welder, but I can weld enough to get it done. So thanks again for watching. I don't know, like I said, what I stepped in, what kind of dumb luck I have to end up with the 2 bumpers that I need that I wasn't even looking for. But once again, I appreciate Alex. He sold me that bumper for the wagon for a reasonable price. This one he discounted, and that's the way it should be done. I remember some time ago I sold some pulleys off of like a 340 small block Mopar engine. It was just some pulleys I had gotten in a car, and they had numbers on them. I looked them up. I saw what they were going for. I think I sold them for like 30 bucks, and people berated me for it. And I can't stand the whole rarity thing. You know, oh, it's rare, so it's worth a gajillion dollars. I needed the radio, quote unquote, delete plate, even though a radio was an option, so it's not a delete. That's a different issue. But I needed that plastic plate for this car since I bought it. It's a 1-year only plate, 1 model only. So it's for 67 Barracuda only. 68, they went to the thumb wheel radio. 67 has the 2 knobs. 67 Dart is a completely different dash. 1 year only. $300, $250 plus shipping. Just because it's rare doesn't mean it's expensive. Correction, doesn't mean it should be expensive. I mean, in my mind, rare can also mean nobody wants it because A, they don't have that car, and B, if they do, they put a radio in it. Okay, that's my rant. My apologies. Thanks for watching. I noticed that the cutout, if I put the cutout on the bottom, there's always an airplane, or a dog, or a bird, or a plane, or Superman. Of course, I imagine he'd be quiet.